From a collapsing crane in Saudi Arabia that sent workers running for their lives, and a runaway pontoon in the UK that destroyed a low-hanging bridge, to a giant steel cobble that looked more like a 2,500-degree lightsaber, and much more. Here are some seriously expensive fails caught on camera. Chongqing is one of 4 major municipalities in China. It's home to about 32 million people and one very clumsy chef. On November 4th of 2015, a chef at a local Chongqing restaurant was using an improvised blowtorch to cook pig's feet. The gas canister caught on fire, and the chef, not wanting to blow up their restaurant, tossed it into the street. Unfortunately, that only made things worse. The gas canister rolled away from the restaurant and wound up under a city bus. You can see where the gas is leaking, as it looks more like a flamethrower. One brave soul runs in to save the bus by tugging on a cord still attached to the flaming canister. But the thing keeps spinning, nearly lighting the man on fire multiple times. The bus eventually catches fire, and it looks like our pyro chef comes running out with an extinguisher. Ultimately, there's nothing they can do. The fire department eventually arrives and puts out the blaze. According to reports, 8 people were on the bus when the gas can rolled underneath. Thankfully, everybody made it off before the bus caught fire. The restaurant was at the top of a sloped street. Apparently, the chef didn't realize round objects tend to roll downhill, even when they're on fire. Svobodnye, Russia is a small city in the Amur Oblast in southeastern Russia. It sits on the banks of the Zaya River and houses a critical railroad depot on the Trans-Siberian Railway. In early October of 2018, a local trucker was crossing a railroad bridge when something went horribly wrong. A train passes underneath the bridge while a worker walks the ground. Everything seems normal, but keep your eye on the left side of the screen. A few seconds after the train passes, a red truck comes into frame. Without warning, the bridge collapses behind the driver. Then the front portion falls, causing him to jump his truck like Vin Diesel. The worker on the ground barely escapes the collapse himself. The bridge probably came a few feet from crushing him. Russian officials said the driver was taken to the hospital, though none of his injuries were life-threatening. The collapse halted traffic on that segment of the Trans-Siberian Railroad, which stretches over 5,700 miles from Moscow to Vladivostok. Oh, fun fact, it's the world's longest railroad line. It takes about 7 days to get from one end to the other, and that's if you never stop. Ever wonder how steel bars are made? Well, it's a simple process requiring superheated metal and a couple of rollers. Molten steel reaches temperatures of about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit, making it much more pliable. A line of rollers shape the steel into a rod or bar, and it's quickly cooled to hold its shape. On December 21st of 2018, employees at this factory learned how quickly that simple process can go completely off the rails. Literally. Watch the right side. Something goes wrong, causing the molten steel to come off the belt rollers. But they don't stop moving. Instead, they spit this giant lasso of molten steel toward our factory worker. He runs for his life as it nearly lands around him. You can see where the last of the steel zips through the machines. Now comes the dangerous process of cutting all that steel and fixing the clog. This type of mill accident is called a steel cobble. It's when something goes wrong with the rollers and the steel deviates from the path. Since the steel can't pass through the clog and the rollers are spinning at 30 miles per hour, it has nowhere to go but out. It'll either coil up or form giant loops like this one. Steel cobbles are no joke. They're extremely hot and can easily set fire to anything they touch. That's why most steel mill equipment is built to withstand extreme heat. Workers at this factory watched from afar as another steel cobble took on a mind of its own. Now, you might be wondering how the workers get rid of these things. Do they cut it while it's malleable or wait for it to cool? First, they must wait for the entire line of steel to pass through the system. Trying to stop it mid-cobble could damage the rollers as the material cools on the belt. Those molten bars will slice through the human body like a hot knife through butter. So, once it's safe, workers cut the steel into smaller pieces with cutting torches. They're well trained for these situations, as steel cobbles aren't that rare. In fact, you'll hear people quote a mill's cobble rate when talking about waste. On February 18th of 2022, Windstorm Eunice smacked into the United Kingdom. It was part of the 2021-2022 European windstorm season, which usually sees several extratropical cyclones hit England, France, the Netherlands, Ireland, and Germany. In the city of Leeds, a local businessman named Andrew Tootin was preparing for the storm. He runs an indoor rock climbing business, but citywide flood warnings closed his doors that day. So he found himself outside watching water levels rise on the River Aire. Then, something floating downstream caught his attention. The storm was so intense that the pontoon, which was originally covered in heavy equipment, broke free and floated down the river. Normally, it would have passed under the footbridge, but because of rising water levels, it smacked clean into it. Eunice caused about 360 million pounds of damage across the UK. Hundreds of thousands lost power, and all travel was grounded due to record-breaking winds. The port town of Jebel Ali sits about 22 miles southwest of Dubai, Saudi Arabia. The port itself is the 9th busiest on Earth and the largest artificial harbor in the world. Due to its size, Jebel Ali is the most visited port by U.S. Navy ships, outside of the U.S., of course. In early May of 2017, an accident at the Jebel Ali port had everyone on high alert, perhaps even the U.S. Navy. A container ship called the CMA-CGM Centaurus came in a little too hot. It crashed into one of the massive loading cranes, leading to a workplace disaster you have to see to believe. Trucks and workers go about their business. Everything seems all right until the Centaurus appears at the top right corner of the screen. It's moving so slowly that nobody notices the danger at first. Then, when it's clear this boat isn't stopping, one of the trucks and a white SUV make a hard U-turn and bounce out of there. Unfortunately, the other drivers never notice. The boat smacks the side, causing the giant crane to bend and break. One of the drivers gets out of there in time. The other loading truck gets flattened like a pancake. The flattened truck never moved from its parked position, so we'll assume nobody was inside. According to reports, only a handful of people suffered minor injuries. The captain, who has not been named, blamed the terminal basin design. He said larger ships have to turn too sharply while trying to berth. It was only a matter of time before something bad happened. In the prefecture-level city of Luzhou, China, a demolition crew was humiliated by a stubborn building. On December 30th of 2009, crews arrived to demolish a 22-floor residential building. The plan was to blast the building up the middle. Ideally, both halves would crumble in on each other. But, as we all know, things rarely go according to plan. The demolition company blamed the failed blast on technical reasons. Apparently, cutting the building in half wasn't the best plan. A crane arrived shortly after to take down the other half. The old apartment building was destroyed to make room for new real estate projects. If you enjoyed this video and want to see another just like it, then be sure to click the link on screen now. As always, thanks for watching and tune in next time.